So, I will say, Ben, you brought me 2 hours and 12 minutes of a musical that I can't say I ever even heard of. Well, maybe I did hear of it. I don't
It
know.
is a
The
little
name sounded
obscure.
Falsetto sounded familiar. I didn't ever look into it. I don't remember ever actually even thinking about seeing it because I don't think I ever got that far into it. But I, after listening to it, I really would want to see it just because I feel like it's one of those shows that is like another album we'll be talking about in a little bit that would be a lot better in person watching the actors do their thing rather than
For sure.
just listening to them sing the songs. Like I feel the same as my album is going to be that you need to see the in between the talking and you need to be able to put it all together as one concealed thing and really to get the full download. But for 2 hours and 12 minutes, they freaking get a lot in there, and you get the most of the storyline. I read on Wikipedia what happened with each song, basically the description of each song, so I
That's
would kind of get
helpful.
what was going on, and I enjoyed it. I mean, I've seen a lot of different plays on Broadway, off Broadway, and I can't say it's in my top 10 by far, but there's also a lot of
Right.
really big musicals out there that are amazing. So I mean that's not an insult at
Mhm.
all. That's just the way it is. I mean it ain't Les Mis, but it's very well done though. I like a lot of different topics they hit on. I like how they handle them. I like it's kind of me. And see, I had this last week when we were recording. It's kind of Philadelphia meets Seinfeld in a way almost. It's
Right.
kind of Philadelphia.
So
It's
you
kind of
haven't named
Philadelphia
it.
meets
One
Seinfeld.
of the themes of the show is AIDS, early AIDS crisis, and one of the main characters dies. Which, by the way, seems like a spoiler, but it's pretty obvious early in the second act where we're heading. But sorry, go back to your review, Jeremy, and then I'm happy to talk about it a little bit. I
I
didn't mean
mean,
to interrupt.
nah, you're good. You're good. But I overall enjoyed it. It was long as shit, and I kept literally checking to see how much longer it was going to be because I was just like, oh my god. I'm like, oh my god. I
I
don't get me
I
wrong.
can
I
explain
love a
why
good.
when yeah.
I
They
mean, I
were
get
two
that it was two.
individual one-act plays, and they got put together on
Yeah,
Broadway. And you
I
can kind of
I
feel
read
that
that.
they have a
Oh,
different feeling.
I
I was gonna
read
say that
that, and
makes so much more sense now.
yeah, I read that, and that's why it made sense to
I've
me because
seen it
when I was trying to
live
figure out
many
which.
times. I love it, and yes, sitting in person, it feels like a long time. I mean, it presents an era, and the two different plays are set a few years apart. So the main kid is 11 in the first act, and he's 13 bar mitzvah age in the second act. And so historically, you go from 1979 when it's sort of like the height of free love and including in the gay community, and then 2 years later the gay cancer, which was the nickname before AIDS became commonly used, was spreading in gay communities in New York City in a very frightening way. And that's this was the first commercial musical that dealt with this topic. Um, so that was sort of historic note. Um, I just I love sharing it because, as you said, you love a bunch of musicals and you'd never heard of this. I know it's sort of a darling of a lot of theater people, which might sound a little snooty, but whatever. I'm a theater
Yeah,
person. I see a lot of
I
stuff.
get it.
Um, the composer is William Finn, who has a slightly more popular one called the Spelling Bee, the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. It's also quirky, but it's lighter material. It's
I've
your
I've
adolescent.
heard that name. I can't say I have any
If
idea
you
what
ever
it
see
is,
it
but
locally, run to see it. It's so much fun.
I
Really,
mean,
really great play.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I looked it up online. I knew it was two different plays put together, and when I was trying to put together like which album to listen to originally, that's when I figured that out. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh, okay. I'm like, well, that makes sense. And
Yeah, it's a big piece of work together for sure. Were there any songs that you particularly liked or enjoyed?
Oh, wait till we get to my top 5. I got a good bunch of honorable mentions because there's a lot of songs I.
Cool.
Oh God, I do my homework fully. It literally took 2 hours and 12 minutes out of my workday. Out of an 8-hour workday, I spent a quarter of it listening to this freaking album. So yes, it was. I put my I put my I put my time in for this, and I enjoyed it. I mean, like I said, the topics were handled well, and there was a lot of. I'm a big musicals have to have comedy for me to really enjoy them a lot.
Oh, it's
Like
funny.
I like comedies more than I like pure dramas. Like Les Mis is great, but it's just I mean for the top it's not funny. It's not that funny, and there are moments, but it's not that funny throughout the whole thing, and it shouldn't be based on what it's the historical moments it's based on. But it's I like more comical comedy musicals, as we'll get to in a little bit when we get to my album. But Chancy, what did you think of the falsettos?
So basically piggybacking off of my miniature tirade I was beginning to go on last week, which I'm kind of glad in hindsight that I wasn't actually able to get spun up like a top because I mean now that I've left the room for wisdom and I'm kind of past when I say I'm past the trauma trigger. No, I mean for real though, like I can make up more, like I can come up with more amusing things to say rather than just like responding like solely off of the trauma trigger. But no, I think I'm not sure how much of it I went into last week, but being in choir in the small town I was in, I had to do both regular and show choir.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that curriculum, if you will, was watching every musical that had been taped up to that point, which would have been like in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Okay,
And
so you saw a lot of movies of shows as part of this.
And it was not optional. There was no, it was definitely a mandatory thing. Like, oh, you want to be in choir? Oh, you have to do show choir. Oh, you want to do show choir? You got to watch the musicals. Oh, you've been stabbed before and your first one's West Side Story? Okay, well that's not how a knife fight looks at all. So all these things are going in my head, and then like I start looking at it and it's like at the same time the flash mob thing was really kind of starting to take off in a big way, like very noticeable, very public. And then I'm thinking to myself, listen, if I'm ever in a large group of people and a flash mob breaks out, I'm gonna freak out. I'm gonna freak the fuck out. I'm gonna think I'm in the middle of a musical and we're gonna have a whole ass psychological break. It's gonna be a thing. But it was just, I think more of it was so I didn't have a choice about it, and they were not any of the good ones. Like if they would have started off with like Newsies or something, I'd have probably been okay. But like we're talking Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, West Side Story.
So challenging
what is it?
material, not you would have liked lighter fare.
Yeah. I mean, like like already not having a choice in the matter.
Sometimes
I would have liked
try to be provocative, but they push it to the point that's uncomfortable. Sounds like
that's kind of the scenario. Yeah. And
so did that ruin all of musicals for you because of that experience of being force-fed musicals that you disliked?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. I mean, there's like it's gotten to the point to where it's not as horrible of an immediate response. Like I say that because like in hindsight there's been things where I'm like, oh, okay, well this technically quantifies as a musical. Like I went back to Newsies. Newsies is like one of the only musicals that I actually really enjoyed. Or like
classic animated Disney. Do you like any of those?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, the old Disney. Yep, the old Disney movies. But for me, I think the disconnect on that was the animation. outside of Bed Knobs and Broomsticks, because that was another one I was going to bring up, which was pretty solid. And then also the nostalgia from watching the Disney movies with my mom and stuff. So there was a disconnect there as well. But it was just like, it felt like that scene from A Clockwork Orange where where I'm in that chair.
The movies they made you watch.
I really did.
What did
I
you
did
want
not.
to be doing instead? You wanted to like have more rehearsal time to be singing?
Yeah. That I didn't. Well, first off, I didn't want to be in show choir because I don't fancy myself much of a dancer. And
yeah, but if you were a boy who sang, you were gold.
that was it. That was it.
Yeah, if you're boy, gold.
Yeah, because I was also like I want to say I think it was an alto tenor or something like that. I know that I was able to have. I was hitting a lot of the higher notes, especially since it was a small choir to begin with. So like doing all NSYNC and Backstreet Boy stuff. I ended up with all the Justin Timberlake parts and all that stuff. It was just a lot of things that I didn't have a choice about, that I wasn't a fan of. Really, just kind of shaped.
I'm smiling, and I'm like, that sounds cool, but it sounds like it was not a good experience for you. Well,
no, at the time.
Let me tell you something. Even though there's like this group, and I feel like we're gonna have the exact same conversation about your music with Ben later on. Okay, so even though you've got this whole pile of real old story that it sounds like super uncomfortable. I mean, you said Clockwork Orange about watching musicals in class. That makes me chuckle because I've seen that movie and I did find it very disturbing. But I also remember how weird it feels to be young and the teacher is like, okay, everyone, we need to do this. And if you're not on board, but you still quote have to, you're kind of stuck. So the good news is now you can try to dip your toe in the water if you want. Of course, this is optional, right? But for instance, it seems you're into like rock and heavier stuff. Is that right?
Honestly, I have a very wide variety. It's just so happened that. Oh yeah. I mean, but it just so happened that when I came to choose the album for this week, I had already been given the two albums. Well, Jeremy gave me his album first, which is very uncommon. So I inherently knew going into it, we were going to be doing some musical stuff. And then at the same time, I was talking to a friend of mine who had originally told me about the band I ended up bringing later on. We'll get to that one later. And I was just like, oh yeah, I hadn't checked that album out yet. So like I checked it out and I was like, yo, sold, went with it. So it was just one of those things on that one. But yeah, no, I mean, I have a very wide variety of likes for music.
Chancy will bring some fucking jazz ass music from the 40s. He'll bring Tracy Chapman's greatest hits, and then he'll bring this heavy ass metal shit. Like he has the biggest range of music I've ever seen. I've never seen people that have a bigger range of music than me personally, usually, and he beats me by far. So,
well, I gotta say, Chancy, I think I was mentioning this when we were doing our earlier opening conversation. Your album for me was very challenging sonically in different ways.
Yeah, for sure.
I tried to I just sort of kept repeating what I say as music teacher, which is don't yuck his yum, don't yuck his yum. Because obviously you wouldn't have picked it if you didn't like it, right? So obviously you liked it. So then I'm like, well, what do I like about it? And I found some different things. And I had some questions. And
we'll get to that.
Just like
we'll get to that.
Obviously, you two won't be putting the CD in your car. Do people have CDs? You won't be streaming that album another time, and that's fine with me. But I'm glad you discovered something new. I mean, that's okay with me.
I can honestly say I wouldn't be streaming this album I brought either in my car at any time of the week. But It's a good album, but I wouldn't stream. I don't stream musical numbers in my car besides a couple of select choices from Moulin Rouge, but because it's Moulin Rouge, come the fuck on, and it's basically like listening to classic rock. But Ben, what were your top 5 tracks off of your album?
My favorite 5 off of Falsettos?
Yes, this is where the hard part comes in.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just gonna do that off the top of my head without even looking. Is that cheap? Is that feels like
That's the best way to do that. That's the best way to do it.
okay?
That's
Yeah.
impressive.
So I'm gonna go from the top one down. The number one is "What Would I Do?" The big dramatic love duet in the second act. It's a spectacular song, and when I see it live on stage, I always cry. I performed it once in a recital. It's a big song. It's incredible. Second one, "Nipping at Its Heels," for very different reasons, is a comedy number. Everyone hates his parents. Fucking hilarious. It's just so funny. The punchline, "Everyone hates his parents. It's in the Torah because God said to Moses, everyone hates his parents. That's how it is. And God knew because God hated his." I mean, that's just comedy gold. So that one, I love. There's a song in the second act called it's where it's like, "Holding to the ground as the ground keeps shifting," and it's just so poignant. And if you know the play, you know the dramatic overtone, right? Like the specific story of worrying about this AIDS crisis and not knowing what was happening. But it also, to me, kind of speaks to when you love people and you're worried about them, kind of more broadly. I mean, like, there is the specificity of this show happened during the AIDS crisis, right? But it's also a family show that I think is timeless, even though it is of one specific time, because everyone is going to be moved to see the special things that happen in a hospital room, for instance, which is part of this play. So any of the songs that deal with that to me are very moving. Number 4 is, again, for comedy, "The Baseball Game." Very, very funny. And it's super amusing to see on stage because you see all the people pantomiming playing baseball and then the audience cheering.
I figured. Do they actually bring a bleacher like piece on stage for that?
They
Okay, yeah, I
do a
figured.
mini bleacher.
I figured, yeah.
Shows like Come From Away have taught us that you can actually have the audience imagine much better than your scenic designer can build. Like that was a show that famously had a jet airplane that appeared on stage, but you don't see it, but you see it, right?
Yep.
So Falsettos did that, especially in the newest production, the one that I saw with my wife when it came back to Broadway most recently. And they used these sort of foam blocks that almost act like almost like child's building blocks, but big and very specific for different set pieces. It was kind of cool and avant-garde, minimalist. And then I saw more conventional staging where they had, big furniture and walls, and that's the apartment and that's the therapy office and so forth. So you can do one play many different ways. And I think for anyone listening, if you have a favorite musical, it can be a fun thing to seek it out in your region, right? Like, especially if you have a favorite one that's kind of famous. There's some that just get performed. I mean, you guys were joking earlier about West Side Story. Yes, it's heavy, but it's also one of the beloved classics that gets performed a lot. I love Fiddler on the Roof, and that gets done a lot. Sound of Music, I always see it when it's around. Hair is a little more racy, but if it's around, Falsettos.
I will say I actually like West Side Story. I don't love it. I like it. It's a good. I can't get past oh, we're gonna go fight in the street with knives and do snapping while we do it. Yay! Like I can't get over that. Like that just pisses me off. Every other part of it I freaking like, but
I've
that just
heard a
pisses
lot.
me
Jeremy,
off.
you're not the first person to offer that critique of West Side Story. So, like, I would just counter that once we all suspend disbelief
You have
and
to.
accept that this group of 6 guys dancing and singing and this group of 6 guys dancing and singing represent street toughs in New York City, like, I mean, the dancing is one of the least absurd things that we agree
I
to.
know.
Right?
I get it.
Part-
And I will say
this
I
is
never
where
seen Fiddler on the
my
Roof.
musical. I have dying people who get up and dance and sing. You know, it's because we can.
Yeah.
It's great fun.
I get the disbelief part. I mean, I've never seen Fiddler on the Roof, but I will say the way Family Guy did it with William Shatner playing the lead role, I want to see that. I want to see that.
Spoof, but not the original. I feel like Weird Al did that to a lot of famous songs. So like I'll reveal my age. I'm 44, meaning I grew up in the 80s and I had music handed to me by my older brother. So I got some Weird Al from him. So there was stuff where the punchline was only funny if you knew the original, right? But because of the years, some of the punchlines I didn't get until years later. So I was just sort of nodding my head. Like, I think it was years, like, eat it, la, 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 eat it. And then at a certain point, I heard the original and I was like, oh, that was so funny. But like
I mean,
3
I
years.
well, I mean, I grew up in the age where you could see all those Weird Al songs with the videos attached to them on YouTube. So
The
it
videos
was
are a lot of fun.
it's a different experience when you actually can see the videos, and watching on Fat with a video is fucking classic and
It's
priceless. But
amazing. Yeah, I think his hair and makeup people won some awards for that. It's
we
amazing.
did a Weird Al bracket on this show actually about a year and a half ago.
Yeah, I'll have to
We
look
did
that up.
we did a
That's
bracket of
part of my
the top 50 Weird Al songs, originals and remakes.
So I have to say, I need to listen to Weird Al again, with the sort of the ear of a songwriter. This sounds a little nerdy, but I'm going to say it anyway. So once you start writing songs, you can sometimes listen to songs in a different way. Not always. Like, I'm not always analyzing blah, blah, blah. But if I decide a song is really clever or has a really cool rhyme, I'll listen to it a few more times and like really, really listen and pay attention to how the words land and this and that. So with a parody song that's really slick, they not only get the rhyme scheme, but they get the syllables, they get the scansion, like where the accents hit. And then if you know it in your ear, the original, it sounds so close that your mind is just like, what? And Weird Al does that really well.
Oh, he's a master of that. He's a master.
Yeah.
So what was your number 5? I'm dying to hear this.
Oh, how about the bar mitzvah song at the end? Just because of the sweet sentimentality. It's so beautiful.
All right.
My daughter
That's
recently had her bat mitzvah, and she did great. Go DJ.
Good.
Nice.
Oh, I gotta say, we actually didn't have that many in common. I got 4 honorable mentions because I mean it was 2 hours and 12 minutes. There's a lot of tracks in this, so I had to have 4 honorable mentions because it's just the way it goes.
But if you ask me again tomorrow, I might pick 5 different ones. TBA.
Oh, if I listen to this album again today, which God no I wasn't, but if I listen to this album again today, then I probably would have a different lineup as well. But
okay, what were your 5, Jeremy?
Well, my number 9, because like I said, I had 4 more mentions. My number 9 was The Thrill of First Love, because I love the piano work in it, and it was just a really good love song. And what the fuck kind of name is Wizard though? That kind of pissed me off. That pissed me off. What the fuck kind of name is Wizard?
Dude,
it's a weird nickname.
No, Ben, don't try to explain it to him. He doesn't understand.
It's a terrible name.
No. You don't. It's not. You don't even have to go that far. He won't understand because you've aged yourself. I will also age myself. See, I was born in '85, so we're only a few years
So
apart.
you're
Maybe about
closer to my
5.
age. And Jeremy, what's your birth year, please?
88. I'm only 3 years younger than Chancy is.
Yeah, but you're uncultured swine,
Okay.
and you have zero fucking experience in any kind of anything. But my point
Oh
was,
my goodness.
he
What
he
the fuck I didn't-
he
You
he
make my
doesn't
teeth
he
for you
doesn't.
thing, but I'm off hours.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, but no, like he won't understand if you explain it, because he doesn't remember things like we do growing up, like Archie and Jughead, like some
I watched.
random. You might. Oh yeah,
I
you watched the net. Yeah, you watched the Netflix show, so you know about Jughead as a reference. I'm talking about an actual drawn comic.
I read the
Archie.
comics when I was a kid. You Jack and Ninny,
Oh,
but
did you? Did you?
yes,
You
I
read
loved fucking.
you. It's
I
like,
loved
what is
Archie
it?
when I was a kid.
How did he put it in? How did he put it in Harry Potter? I didn't know you could read.
Yeah, fuck you.
Ben is
I was
making
actually
his alarm face.
I was well read as a child. Thank you. So fuck you. But my number 8 was "Year of the Child" because it was a good song, and I love the
Oh, I
line
like that
"Religion is
one
just a
too.
trap." I love the line "Religion is just a trap." Like I love that line, but because it really is.
And
But
it's a fun company number where you see all the characters opining.
yes, which I like that in musicals. I like when it's the whole cast kind of going in one song, like back and forth. Like I kind of like that, and kind of like in the producers, but at the end of it. But
Yep.
my number 7 was "Making a Home" because it was just a good song. I really didn't have any specific reason in that one.
Sweet.
My number 6
Sentimental and
was
loving.
exactly. I mean, that's what it was. And my number 6 was "This Had Better Come to a Stop" because I love
The breakup
I love
song.
I love the comparison between women and gay men and how they're trying to make gay men be women. And like, I'm like, this is so fucked up, but so like iconic at the same time for when it was written. Like, it's like put Elton John singing this fucking song and it would have been like iconic as shit. But,
Hmm.
and I mean, the music and singing it was fucking incredible too. I'm not gonna lie. But
Yeah.
my number 5, which
Great vocal.
I honestly thought my number 5 would be a lot higher, but it kind of got knocked down. My number 5 was "Four Jews in a Room Bitching" because what a hilarious way to open a fucking album. What a great way to open a show. That's fucking hilarious. Basically, right there is a description of Seinfeld. But uh, but my number 4 was "My Father's a Homo" / "Everyone Tells Jason to See a Psychiatrist" because what a way to open a song. Like, just to open a song with "My father's a homo." Like, I fucking was like dying laughing at that line because I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, how? How they get away with this?
Well, it's funny, and it's also like it centers Jason in the drama. I mean, think about it. For the listeners who don't know the story, basically, it's a nuclear family that breaks apart when the husband comes out as gay, divorces his wife, and runs off with his gay lover. So the 12-year-old kid is like, "What just happened?"
I know
he's confused.
it is, and it's a great song, but just the way the opening line like fucking had me dying laughing because I'm like, who the fuck opens a song like that? Like, that's awesome. That's amazing.
Yes, and William Finn is a proud gay man, so he gets to be a little bit playful with some terms that I wouldn't be comfortable writing as
I had a feeling.
proud, mostly
I had a
straight
feeling.
guy.
I had a feeling. But and then my number 3 was "Everyone Hates His Parents" because I like that same line you did about like even God hated his parents. Like like that had me laughing, and it's a sentiment that everybody can feel at times in their life. So it's a song that everybody can understand.
Nice.
My number two was "The Games I Play" because that is an amazing fucking song.
Oh, I can't believe that should. Am I allowed to change my list after the fact? I need
Of course
to.
you are. You can change your list on a daily basis in your life if you want
to my
to.
list, or just put it in my top 6 because that's a favorite song, and I performed it at a cabaret, and it was a big ta-da, and people like it.
Nice.
It's a good song.
Very awesome. But my number one, as morbid as it may be, is "You Gotta Die Sometime." Because
great song.
There's a song one of my favorite bands, Avantasia, does called "Death Is Just a Feeling." and it kind of reminded me of that song in a way. It kind of reminded me of that song and the same sentiment of the topic, same music, almost, not close enough to ever say that anyone copied off anybody, but very similar. So, and then I like morbid songs, so that song was really morbid, and it just kind of hit me because like it's true, everybody's got to die sometime.
Well,
So,
Jeremy, you're gonna love my musical, dude.
when you bring it to Massachusetts, tell me, I will see it.
I know some Massachusetts people. Let's talk. But yeah, you're right. The song you're referencing is morbid. It's beautiful, and it's one of the dramatic high/low points of the show, because we come to love Whizzer, even though he has this unfortunate name. We still love him because he loves Marvin, the other main character, and he becomes a surrogate father of a type to lonely Jason. And he's a sweet guy, so we're rooting for him, and when he falls, we're all sad. I mean, you have to sort of, it seems crass to say, but it's important for dramatic effect. I've had to learn this as a playwright, to help the audience care about the people before you do something awful to them. Otherwise, it's just like a slasher movie, which I'm not a fan of, but I understand that a lot of times people die left and right, and you're like, oh, that happened. We move on. However, if you
Yeah.
compare that to, say, you referenced Philadelphia, Jeremy, there's only one death in that movie, right?
Yep.
Right.
But that'll knock you out for days. Devastating
Yep.
performance from Tom Hanks. And
Right.
that movie probably did more to change the public understanding around AIDS than almost anything else before it. I mean, and it wasn't a documentary for sure. It was definitely a Hollywood, but it was,
Yeah.
there was some really rough stuff in there. And you think about on the timeline, part of what's so horrifying when you learn about this period is that for so much of the 80s, so many people, especially gay men, were dying, and things that could have saved lives were either not being taught about or talked about. And that includes both condoms and IV, free needles, because both of them are associated with sin, right? People are grossed
Yep.
out about the fact of gay sex, like as if heterosex is inherently not gross. Like, come on, everything's a little bit gross. But the squeamish / sin factor and that whole judgment thing, both for drug users and gay men, caused, unfortunately, many people in the public health sector to not do their jobs. And because of that, many, a whole generation of people, especially in New York City and San Francisco, were wiped out. Now, this happened before I came of age, but the first iteration of this show hit right when I was 13. So, like, theater people kind of knew about it. And I was handed a cassette tape, again, to age me or date me, in middle school. And it felt a little bit taboo because there's like some sexy stuff in it, and like all of this sort of free and open talk about all kinds of love, gay, lesbian, straight, in that order. And the music to me right away was really spectacular. And also, I should mention that it was delivered to me by a high school girl.
Oh,
It was
that's that right there.
Fiona. So I think all of us listening knows at least one album that we may or may not objectively like, but it was handed to us by someone who we kind of loved, and we're like, this album always has like a magical sheen, right? So for me, the first album, like musical, I was handed by a cool teenager was Falsettos. I had like vinyls at home from My Fair Lady and West Side Story and Brigadoon, that kind of stuff, which I liked, but this one like blew my
I
mind when I heard it.
I can't say I ever had a lady hand me a musical CD, cassette of or anything like that. But I mean, personally,
or
I never had
fella
a.
or person. What about a buddy or like someone who was like really cool and they're like, listen to it?
It was more my mom took me to a fucking stage and said, "Sit down and watch this,"
Okay.
and
And
I fell in love
live
instantly
music
because
good for you?
I liked the performance, so I fell in love with Broadway immediately when I got shown it. But
Nice.
which actually I think my first one I think my first one was Radio City Music Hall's Christmas Spectacular. But
Wow, talk about a visual. Yeah, and you
yeah,
know the comment you made before about listening to it as opposed to seeing it is totally valid.
oh
And
god,
I
for a lot of
think
musicals.
well, right, and I've had the experience recently of seeing a musical on stage, again, usually at a community theater or regional theater that I'd never seen before, but I knew the soundtrack, right? Because I just like listening to this genre, especially as someone who writes it and performs it. So I got to see one, and I was like, oh, like it just so much of it that I had heard made new sense. And then I listened to it again in the car and I had these visuals that I never had before. It was so much fun. I had that like for Kinky Boots, which I saw at an amazing professional regional production. I knew every word of that album. It's great. That's the one that Cyndi Lauper wrote, won a ton of
Right
awards.
on.
Great. Um, Visually, it's really fun. It's set in a shoe factory. There's drag queens. There's all this cool stuff that you just can't see when you listen to it. So if you have one you like to listen to it, you know, see if you can see it on stage or even find a movie. But don't force Chancy, right? Especially when he's younger.
I can't get this motherfucker to watch Moulin Rouge even. Who you kidding?
No, listen, I'm going to put on my hat as music teacher to small children. Listen, it's okay if we like different things. That's okay. You're allowed to like different stuff from your friends, and you can still be friends.
Oh, this show wouldn't survive on
No,
this show would
speaking
not
of,
survive
how do
100
you like
episodes if we
Chancy's
couldn't.
album? Wait, what's that, Jeremy?
I said this. I'm like this show wouldn't have lasted 100 fucking episodes if we couldn't learn to like other people's music.
Or at least,
Well,
you
you
know,
know what?
it would have
I was
ended when I brought
telling
Sunhouse.
no, Chancy, seriously, I was really having a time listening to that album. And then I listened to it a little bit more. The second time through, it was a little bit better. I'm not going to lie. I
Yeah.
don't think there's going to be a third listen.
No,
Yeah,
and
it's
no, that's
it's
totally. I'm.
But
it's not even
I've got
near.
my
It's
top
not even near
five.
the
I've
worst.
got long notes.
It's not even near the worst album. It's not even near the worst album you ever brought. So I mean, come on, nowhere near. But Chancy, what were your top 5 falsettos? Because we got to get to your album eventually, so he can fully unload.
So,
I'll be gentle. I just met you.
oh, you know, I
Ooh.
mean, hey, no, that's cool, man. As long as it's funny, I don't care. I mean, I like good humor as much as the next person. That's why whenever I say something, I always try to make it amusing, so that way, you know. I think somebody famous once said, if you don't make them laugh, then they'll kill you. Something to that effect. But
Yes.
so for the first time in the history of this show, I don't actually have a top 5 for either one of your albums. That's why I wanted to go up last.
Motherfucker.
So, but hold on. I will say,
It's like
and
going into the voting booth and then leaving the voting booth.
no, well, I guess it depends on what state you live in. It'd be more like going into the voting booth, writing your name on the ballot, and then voting for yourself, essentially. But like,
Sounds like you're
so
opting out.
no, I listened to both of your albums in their entirety, and I can prove to you that I did because of the fact that I always start with the guest's album first, and I always put it on, and I'll start to play video games because I'm kind of neurodivergent like that. Like I have to. That's how I kind of dissect music. Is
Nice. What
that
game do you like to play while you listen?
usually it's either like Diablo 4 or Destiny 2. It's like usually it's either yeah, Destiny 2 is a first person shooter, and then Diablo 4 is like a MMORPG or something like that. It's just a role playing game, something really simple that you can just like set and basically go into autopilot, and then if you catch things on the first listen through, it'll pick up better for me at that point. Like, case in point, I should say, the very first song on Falsettos made me extremely uncomfortable until we met last week, because I was like, what kind of a fucking show am I going to next week? And then it continues to go on, and it talks about the hating the parents, and I'm like, wait, what kind of a fucking musical is this? And then
there's a lot
there's
of sarcasm. There's a lot of resentment, a lot of neuroticisms of different types,
and a lot of shifting gears. I actually, I mean, as far as it goes, I honestly, without having seen the actual play, I enjoyed it enough because of the fact that I was able to piece together the story really well. Because I'm guessing, unless it's like you did say until you explained that it was 2 1-act plays.
It's also mostly sung through, so you've heard nearly every word. There's barely
Right.
dialogue.
See, yeah. So like that also kind of helped me to piece everything together, except for the gear shift when it goes, because you were saying it was 2-act plays or 2 1-act plays that was put together, I should say.
Correct.
And then that was really hard to catch on to because you immediately notice it, but you can't put your finger on it. You're like, okay, wait, hold on, what's going on? Like, wait. It's almost like a scrambling to try and figure out what's happening. But
that makes sense.
But then, things start to progress in the second 1-act portion, and okay, these things are actually are kind of connected in a way. Okay, well then there's this. Okay, and then as you start getting the whole of it, you start to pick up on the pieces. Like I noticed more of the nuance when I finished listening to it than the hit points that came across while I was in the process of listening to it. Because as I was listening to it, it was like I think that might be part of my problem, is the fact that I have a hard time processing nuance to a certain degree. And I think that might be one of the things that makes it, outside of the whole, Clockwork Orange reference joke to my exposure to musicals. But like, I think that might also be part of what makes it hard for me to digest a play over any other form of media, whether it be audio or visual. Is because I'm watching and listening and taking all the things in, and I'm thinking to myself, it's like that scene in Supernatural when they come in and they catch the angel watching porn for the first time, and he's like, I don't think that the pizza man really likes that woman. That's kind of the thing. It's like
it made me laugh.
See, but no, I mean, I can tell you this much.
You leave out the best part.
What?
Why does he keep spanking her bottom?
Well, I mean, everybody got the reference already. There wasn't no sense in kicking the horse while it was dead. But
how about I appreciate both the setup and the bonus?
Yes. Yeah, fair enough. You can definitely tell you're a teacher.
Yeah, I'm professionally nice. Also trained as a chaplain, so you can even be dying or, a curmudgeonly old person, and I'll still be nice to you. At least while I'm paid to.
That's okay though, because I mean, if I was an old curmudgeon and or dying, I'd probably enjoy bullshitting with you because you seem all right. But like,
You seem all right too. A massive eyeball.
I know, right? It hurts. It's so red. It needs to blink, but there's no eyelid. But you can, and here's the actual proof in the pudding, and Jeremy will know it. I enjoyed listening to this album more than I will ever enjoy watching, listening to, or even discussing across the universe.
You are a fool, but okay.
And that's how Jeremy knows that I am telling you the truth when I listened to both of your albums. It was almost 4 hours of what I assumed to be a different form of enhanced interrogation techniques. And I expected to wake up at any moment on a black site somewhere. But
this is so unexpectedly dark. And what's funny to me about this, Chancy, is I thought
that it's funny.
Well, it's
see, and that's why you're all right. That's why you're all right.
Dark, your album was, and there's the turn, folks. There's the turn. It is the dark specter of musical theater that has Chancy spooked beyond belief. But hey,
I mean, honestly, though, I mean, if we're talking about it, if we're talking about it on that front, your play album, however you want to put it, it deals with some pretty heavy shit. That's, I mean, as far as that goes, that's pretty fucking heavy metal, if you ask me.
Wait, are you talking Life Review, the Hospice musical, or Falsetto is the one that I brought to the show?
He's talking Falsetto, I believe.
Yeah, the one that you brought. Yeah. Well, I mean, I haven't experienced the other one, but
it's not light and easy. It's not light and easy,
right?
And I mentioned the historical context because
for sure.
It hadn't really. Basically, William Finn and his creative team, they put a bunch of stuff on stage that just hadn't been seen on commercial Broadway. The both of the one acts when they hit were off Broadway, and then when they combined, they did a limited Broadway run and had some success at the Tonys. They were nominated many times over, and I think they won a few, but not a lot of awards. And now it's like it's done here and there at regional theater. It's not a super famous play, but people who know it love it because it's quite wonderful. So glad to be spreading it to your listeners. I wonder if a few of you brave people will give it a listen after hearing it.
Well, I always put in one track in between our album segments. I always put in one track from each album. So, part of one track. So they'll get at least a sample of it if anything. If they want to go check out more, that's up to them 100%. But they'll get a sample of it. That's for damn sure.
Nice. So, Chancy, you liked that it covered some tough material. Even though you're generally averse to the form, were there songs that you still liked? Just you said you made a print on list, but like there were still moments.
Absolutely. The first song absolutely stood out, obviously. Like, because it's one of those things, like I'm in the middle of starting a PvP match, and then all of a sudden it goes into I can't even remember the exact line, but it caused me to physically look at my phone and see the name of the track, which I think is like
the name of the song is "4 Jews in a Room Pitching."
Yeah, and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah,
actually, I'm like, what the fuck?
Chancy told me after you to leave last week. He's like, when I first heard this, when I heard the first track, I thought this was like an anti-Semitic album or something.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck's happening? And then,
as a proud Jewish man, there are definitely some moments in the play. Now, William Finn, despite the name that sounds super Irish, he's Jewish, and at least half of his family, which is Jewish enough for me. But like, there's definitely a lot of kind of insider humor, both about gay people and Jewish people. And I think
Yeah.
if you're not part of one or both of those communities, some of it may feel a little bit cringe. And, you know,
Oh,
I
only the
accept that. A
only
couple
the first. Oh no. It was really only the first like couple minutes, because then like once we got further down into the track list with like, you know, he hates his parents, uh like, because like everyone keeps telling Jason he needs to go to a psychologist or something like that. That one,
Yes, very funny.
psychiatrist, yes, exactly. Like I definitely like it was like, okay. Once I realized it was actually like not necessarily okay for me to laugh, but for lack of a better term, like it was actually okay to laugh at for a little bit, but not
Yeah,
with a
yeah,
not with a nefarious intent, you know. It's like, okay, I kind of get the point here. Like I see what you did there. Okay.
It's a satire. It's a satire on. It's a satire of trying to hit on heavy topics while keeping it light to some degree. You know what
Exactly.
I
I was
mean?
going to say it's the only possible way that you could talk about that period in that part of the world in that frame of time, because of just literally I mean, it was almost apocalyptic in
it was
hindsight, because I'm a
devastating.
super. Oh, really? Absolutely. Because like I'm a really big like historical like documentary, big into that kind of thing. Like I'll watch things even if I'm not really all that interested in it. And I had come across quite a few things that talked about like the more unspoken reality of the AIDS epidemic, even as far as like, you know, even like when Roy Cohen and Brian, you know, like all those famous people that came up that, oh my God, I can't believe Rock Hudson, da 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 da. But by that time, it was already ravaging. Just it was like a multi frontal assault that entire decade. Just death, carnage, and despair. But you
It's
know,
really a
hey,
shameful, and it's
give
really a shameful time. I mean, when you think back on it, and the choice, so many of the choices made, like I said earlier, I believe were couched in hate and ignorance. Um, you know, we are certainly only evolved in certain kinds of ways. Like, clearly, at least legally speaking, we've moved light years ahead for gay people in terms of marriage and other equality provisions. But yeah, there was a lot of fear and a lot of hatred. People really got in front of cameras and said, "This is God's revenge on the gay lifestyle." Like, there's so much wrong with that sentence. You know, it's not a lifestyle, it's how you're born. You wouldn't choose to do something or to love people in a way that's going to make everyone hate you. I mean, but I think a lot of the sensibilities that I talk about sort of comfortably, at least in terms of where I sit socially and politically, would seem way wacky, lefty, crazy liberal back in the 80s. Like, most people really hid this stuff. There were a lot of people like Marvin who were married, you know, pretend married. It was a thing.
oh
And,
yeah, for sure.
and I think a lot of people were very sad in those sham marriages. They did it for different reasons, especially like if they're military. You had to have a pretend wife if you were a gay guy in the military. My God. But yeah, so it's certainly an important play for how it shined a light on these different parts of a hidden crisis. Um, yeah, really
That
hopeful.
actually made me respect it a lot, because of the fact that it was one of those things where it was almost in a way, without really trying to be overt, a no, you're not going to shut the door on this. Like
Mhm.
we're not gonna not talk about this.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the kind. I mean, I'm always kind of like that's kind of my thing, especially when it comes to things that need to be discussed.
Yeah.
It's just more so of a willing, like we just need to have the willingness of discussion. But
Right.
yeah, no, I really, like I said, I definitely enjoyed that album infinitely more than I actually enjoyed Across the Universe.
Well, thanks,
I don't
Chancy. I'm
know.
glad you gave it a chance.
Chancy hates the
Ah,
Chancy is not a fan of the Beatles, so yeah. But
Okay.
I it pisses me off for
Hey,
some
it's
reason.
it's
But
not that's not really true because every time somebody brings an album with the Beatles on it, I'm always like, oh, this song I actually kind of enjoy. I'm just not a huge John Lennon fan. That's all that it is. You know,
yeah,
you can separate the art from the artist, but still just not necessarily be a fan.
All right.
well, that means,
poor
folks.
poor Ben.
Ben's had a long effing day. I didn't tell you early in the recording, but I came straight from a tech rehearsal for my musical, which is appearing at Charm City Fringe. Woo, woo. All
Nice.
you Baltimore people, come down. But yeah, I'm wiped. So I want to talk about your album and then call it a day. We're already
Yes.
56 minutes in.
Yep, we can rush. I'm sure the rest of it will be a little bit more rushed. But that brings us to my album, which I'm sure ain't gonna take long. But you see, you brought a musical, and I'm thinking to myself, all right, I finally got a chance to bring a musical and fuck with Chancy. I'm bringing a fucking musical. I wanted to bring. I brought Moulin Rouge soundtrack on before, so I didn't want to do that. I couldn't do that again. So I'm like, all right, I'm thinking the producers. I'm thinking a lot. I almost like want to look up the soundtrack for Seussical the musical because I saw it when I was fucking in like middle school, and I always wanted to bring that on just to fuck with Chancy. I almost brought it Across the Universe just to fuck with Chancy because I know much she hates it, and I almost brought that too. But I'm like, you know what?
A theme.
I'm gonna bring the musical that I've actually seen that has meant the most to me and has been one of the best experiences of my life. I'm like, and it's by two geniuses, fucking Trey Stone and Matt Parker. Trey Stone and Matt Parker's genius. Yeah, I fuck it up again, Chancy.
No,
Did
just
you
the way it
realize,
just.
Chancy, as you listened to this, that it was the South Park guys? Did Jeremy tell you
Oh,
that?
I knew right out the gate as soon as I saw Book of
I-
Mormon exactly what it was. I
how could
knew
you?
what.
I mean, how could you not know? It's they literally for a year of South Park for a season of South Park at one point at the end of every episode it would just have like the Book of Mormon like now playing in New York City like it because they advertised the shit out of it. They did a special on Comedy Central about how they make the show in 7 days for each episode and like it showed them like at the Book of Mormon rehearsals like getting ready for the show and everything. Like it basically changed how South Park too because it made them less available to do South Park at the time. So it was a big change for them. And my dad actually took me to New York City to see the Book of Mormon live for my 25th birthday because he knew how much I wanted to fucking see it.
It's
And it was
great.
cool. It wasn't really like on Broadway; it was off Broadway kind of. And you like the cast is walking around outside while everybody's waiting in line to go in, like kind of talking to people. It was a cool, very like small experience. And I literally, when I saw this play, I knew it was gonna be funny because it's Matt and Trey. I knew it was gonna be funny, but I literally did not stop laughing the whole fucking play. It is one of the most funny fucking things I've ever seen in my life. I told Chancy at the end of after you left last week. I told Chancy like if they need to do a movie of this and they need to have Jonah Hill and Michael Cera play the main characters and have Terry Crew play the chief of the African tribe. Like it would be fucking hilarious. Like it would be beyond belief funny if they did that. And so yeah, I brought the Book of Mormon soundtrack because it's one of the funniest fucking things I've ever heard in my life. And I haven't heard it since I saw it live. So I was dying to kind of like hear the songs again because I've seen it. So, but this is an album that truly, it's a lot better if you can see the talking in between the songs because there's a lot of dialogue in the Book of Mormon. It's not just the songs. There's a lot of talking in between. So I will say that it definitely is one thing that does go with this album. But overall, I love this fucking album. It's fucking so many good songs. such great performances by the people who did it. I mean, Josh Gad, for God's sake, fucking Olaf. Like
Yeah.
it's a star-studded album. It's fucking amazingly done, and I loved it. I mean, it was it's my favorite play of all time. Out of the fucking 3 dozen plays I've seen live, it was my favorite one of all time. So I enjoyed the shit out of it, and I had to bring this album. If you're gonna bring a musical, I'm like, I'm bringing Book of Mormon. I'm like, there's other ones I could have brought. Producers was a damn close call almost, but I'm like Book of Mormon.
Great
But
choice, Jeremy. I enjoyed listening to it, and I ended up hearing it 4 times maybe in the last week or two. Good stuff.
nice. See, I told you to be faster. And Chancy, what did you think about finally hearing the Book of Mormon?
So, honestly, the only thing that I can really say is listening to these 2 particular albums actually brought my attention towards the quality of the sound of the people singing, as far as like their singing ability, which, as you know, someone who was formerly in choir, brought me something new to appreciate. Having said that,
Here it is.
well, no, not really, because like having listened to Ben's album first, absolutely nothing stood out to me for this album. Like nothing stood out in the sense of like outside of the quality of the sound of the people singing. And then it also translated into both of these plays as well. But I mean, I could definitely pick up on some of the humor. It kind of basically just felt like a episode of South Park that got sprinkled with that old movie that they did, Orgasmatron.
Well, yeah.
That's kind
Obviously.
of, or I'm sorry, Orgasmo.
Yeah.
But
Or
I mean, honestly, that's kind of that's
song.
that's the Motorhead song. Yeah, I remember. I know. I brought the album, but that I mean, honestly, that was just kind of what it was for me, and also just goes to speak more about Ben's album because I listened to them literally back to back, and I brought nothing away from the second one. So, like I said, it was literally almost 4 hours because it was literally almost 4 hours because I listened to one and then the other without like one straight into the next.
Yeah. I mean, I did the same thing. I listened to Ben first, then mine, and I listened to yours last. But I mean, it actually did come from an episode of South Park. There's an episode of South Park about Mormons,
I remember.
and that's where the idea came from. And
Yep.
that's the only thing that pissed me off about the musical is they didn't include that dumb like fucking backline whenever they were telling the story about like Mormon history. Like I was hoping they would do that in the play. They didn't, but well, it's a small thing I could live with not being there. But well, for my album, I actually had less for my album than I did for Ben's. I had 3 honorable mentions for mine, unlike the 4 I had for Ben's, but also a lot less tracks, so easy to understand. But my number 8, my first honorable mention was "Tomorrow Is a Latter Day," mainly because I love at the end when they're knocking on the door and, "Hi, I am Elder Butt Fucking Naked." Like that is one of the funniest moments in the play, which you don't hear it on the album, but the funniest moment in the play basically is when he introduces himself. He's like, "I am General Butt Fucking Naked." Why naked? How else do you butt fuck somebody? Like it's fucking the theater dies laughing at that line. The theater dies laughing.
You know,
And
fun fact, which is also extremely fucked up. There actually was an African warlord who was actually named General Butt Naked.
So
yeah,
maybe
I
that's
could
a joke.
that's probably where they got it from. But and my second honorable mention was 2 by 2. I love how like he's getting all excited because he wants to go to like Florida so he can go to Disneyland or some shit. And then when he finally gets Uganda, it's like fucking hilarious. Like it's fucking like his reaction on stage is hilarious when he gets Uganda and he realizes that he's going to Africa. And my last honorable mention was I Believe, because they list all the fucking crazy things that Mormons actually believe. Like I believe God started accepting black people in 1987. Like, what the fuck? It's like one of the most fucked up things ever said, but it's fucking just the way they deliver it is so fucking hilarious. Like, the only thing they didn't bring up was Mitt Romney's fucking magic underwear, which I wish they did, but because it was after that point, so they could have brought it up. But that's the only thing I missed out of that song. But my number 5 was All American Prophet because fucking hilarious. My number 4 was Man Up because it's actually a motivational song. Man Up is a really motivational song. My number 3 was Making Things Up Again because the shit he makes up to get rid of STDs, go fuck a frog. Like, that shit's hilarious. That shit is so fucking hilarious. But my number 2, which I actually forgot about this song until I heard the album again, but my number 2 was Spooky Mormon Hell Dream because it's just such a groovy ass song with a great guitar. It reminds me of a Rob Zombie song. It basically reminds me of a Rob Zombie song. So I fucking love that song.
Gesundheit.
Bless you.
I'm gonna need to get to bed soon, so I wonder if
Me
we
too.
can wrap in about 10 minutes or so. That's possible.
We could definitely push for it.
Let's go
And
for it.
my number one had to be Hasadiga Ibawai because a song called "Fuck You God" is fucking classic and priceless, and only Trey and Matt would do that shit. But
Very funny.
what were your top 5 songs, Ben?
All right, rattle them off. Number 5, Baptize Me, funny and sexy duet. Number 4, All American Prophet, great dance number. Love the groove. The horns are on blast, and fabulous vocal from the star. I Believe, an amazing power ballad. You liked it for the comedy. I just like it for the musical lift.
I did too, but yeah.
Maybe both things. Number 2, Hello, amazing opening number.
Yes, it is.
And it's very funny and clever the way it says, "Hello, my name is Jesus Christ," and so forth. So that always makes me laugh. And my number 1 I went with was You and Me, which I believe might be the best comedy duet of all time. They're just so good together. And it's there are several songs of this nature. One that comes to mind is from The Prom, which is about where there's a song where it's like both of us. It's very similar joke, but I just enjoy a song where the person's like sort of like a ridiculous a-hole, but they're like, "Ta-da, it's me." That's very funny. So you and me, but mostly me, will change the world together. And I'll stand back here and watch. I mean, that's just great.
It's fucking hilarious.
It's also funny that he knows his place. He's the side man, and that's okay. Great stuff. Great stuff. Well, thank you for bringing me this album, Jeremy.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
It was a trip down memory lane. It was a trip down memory lane.
What is it? Every struggle is a lesson. Or to quote my personal rabbi, Kelly Clarkson, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." Yep, that's right. So it didn't kill me, Chancy. Jeremy.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't bring that one, but I can understand why you would say that.
And
it was challenging.
Oh, I can imagine.
So
It's definitely not for everybody.
Piano.
Correct.
This will surprise 0 listeners. Mr. Musical Theater doesn't usually listen to death metal or whatever category you put this in. What category do you put this in, Chancy?
I mean, death metal's fine. Heavy metal
works. Heavy metal, great.
Yeah, I mean, everything's kind of been broken down. So many, like, everything's got so many subgenres. Yeah, I know, right? It's like, what's the point?
Yeah, no. So it's not the kind of music I usually listen to. As my mother would say, it's not for me. However, I listened to different tracks and I had some notes. And, so number 1, Wasted Life. I like the gorgeous atmospheric introduction, and then a crash into chaos, stunning contrast, and it seemed to be about environmental destruction. There was a quote of drilling our way toward the end of the world. So I thought that was a pretty intense lyric.
Nice.
And I also said, listening note, I think the melody line is underneath the vocal and the guitar line,
That's very likely.
which
There's
helped.
usually
It took a couple listens to notice that, because this style involves a vocal that is not melodic. Would that be accurate and non-judgmental?
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely
There's no attempt to make a vocal line melody. It's more like
yeah,
rhythmic and just tech, almost like rapping, but what do they call it? Like growling, screaming?
it's
I'm
like
not sure.
I think it's like a dissonant tone or something to that effect. I don't remember the name I had learned it recently, but I'd already forgotten it.
Right. But underneath that, for this track, it had a melody that
Yeah.
went with the vocal. So that was interesting to hear. I said the drums are crazy, like bananas drums. And I could kind of imagine in my head. I'd love to see a video of the drummer doing that, because it was crazy fast. I said I
Yeah.
can imagine the guy is sweating. I wrote, this vocal style is not for me. Is it how he sings, or is it using effects? Do you know, Chancy? Is that distorted using electronics, or is that au
So
naturel?
more often than not, it's au naturel.
Wow.
That's part of the reason as to what brings my attention towards it. Well, I should say that's one of the things that makes me like it as much as I do, because of
That
the
aspect of vocal appeals to you. That's so interesting. So
it's so difficult. Yeah.
I wrote also Spotify lyrics made it better, as in I could read along. So
Yeah.
Amen.
yeah,
fucking man.
I watch TV with closed captions. I have some processing issues, and it helps me a lot.
For sure.
I could not understand this. I mean, I felt the same way the first 10 times I listened to Hamilton, because it's so fast, or a lot of hip hop with clever stuff. Like, seeing the lyrics helps so much. So in this case, to be honest, again, I'm trying not to be judgy. Some of the
No,
words are
say
a
what
little
it
bit
is.
unintelligible, and I think
Yep.
that's part of the style.
Yep.
Like, it's challenging to decipher the meaning without it being put out for you. So once I read the lyrics, and then the second time I listened, I started to listen to the powerful groove and the dramatic arc, and then finally the contrast with the quiet ending. So that was my wasted life. All right. Number 2, mass produced. I said
Nice.
again, gorgeous.
That's my number 2.
33. I just went with the first 5, and I just made notes because I didn't really know how to put them in order. I said again, a gorgeous 33-second intro. Crashing in vocal, fire drums, slashing guitar. I'm noticing like a structural theme here, or pattern. The lyrics are intense. Honestly, I turned it down, and the words still were difficult. This one, yeah, I said horns problematic. Oh yeah, so I mentioned earlier, I'm a proud Jewish guy. Some of the language I found problematic, with some like anti-Semitic tropes about horns and stuff. Now sometimes stuff like that, a Jewish person might be like more sensitive to it, and I don't know if that was
Yeah, I was gonna
intentional or
say.
not, but I never like.
I was
And
gonna
then
say.
I
I didn't notice that, so I'd have to go back to that song, and I actually didn't put the lyrics on to read it.
yeah,
So I'll have to check that
and
out.
then
Yeah, that's my
yeah.
bad.
No worries. And I didn't hear it in any kind of hurtful way. Just like sometimes something like that pops up, and it's like, I mean, in the earlier conversation, when you mentioned the opening number of Falsettos, it is at once funny, but it also deals head on with problematic stereotypes about Jewish men being like complaining all the time, right? So if that's a stereotype that you find personally unsettling, you're going to be really turned off by the musical and maybe walk out the theater. Like, however, they go into much more difficult territory. returning to
For
your
sure.
challenging album, we're back. Number 3, Darkness Rising. I wrote, is this suicidal? I had to stop the track because it was too upsetting. So I want to be real for a second. I'm a relatively healthy, well-adjusted man with some history of mental health challenges, including some stuff with depression. So whenever there's someone who says like, trigger warning, we're going to have a blah, blah, blah conversation about suicide, I'm like, do I actually want to listen to this or not? Right. So when this song went into that territory, I sort of braced myself because it's challenging for me. And all I wrote here is I had to stop the track. It was too upsetting. So this is like, without going to the specifics of that, I just want to name the fact that one thing that impressed me about this album was the emotional terrain that it covered through the power of musical contrast and very intense poetic lyrics. And I mean,
Nice.
I was laughing with my wife, who's a trained school counselor, among other things. I said, these songs, if you found them scribbled inside a child's notebook, you would be like, to quote Falsettos, get thee to a psychiatrist.
Right.
or just like go to the school counselor now. So, one track about environmental doom, one about consumerist doom, one about suicidal ideation and action. And then number 4 was number 4 was about rioting, I believe, into the flames. Again,
Oh,
send
yeah.
this kid to the school counselor. So I wrote interesting rhythms and meter changes. That was very different musically from the other tracks. And he sings you. Who is the subject? Is it a bad guy? Is it an unseen enemy? Is it the listener? ... He wrote Watch Humanity Fall. And I wrote, is it an anthem for anarchy, chaos, rioting, etc.? Like, how in the various documentaries about the bad Woodstock, they talk about how when
Altamont.
right.
Oh, you're talking about the actual Woodstock
No, the
98.
actual second, yeah, exactly. Woodstock 99.
Yeah.
Yeah.
99,
So
yeah.
they were playing break shit
Mm-hmm.
when things got really hot, and then some of the crazy kids started breaking shit. So I don't know if it's literally causal, but I could kind of imagine if this got played in the wrong place, it could be dangerous. And that's not to say it's ever an excuse. Kids, don't do dangerous stuff, no matter what music you're listening to, says the music teacher. However, acknowledging the power of the different tracks, like I listened to this one, and the music teacher in me, or the elementary school teacher in me, got a little bit unsettled because I was like, "This, oh boy." And then the last thing I wrote is, quote, "Board up your windows, people," says Old Man Ben.
That's awesome.
So that was number 4, Into the Flames. And then I think the last one I'm going to pick was the interlude, which I liked.
Oh, yeah.
It was quiet and beautiful. And I kept waiting for the shoe to drop the way the first few did, where it was quiet, beautiful, and then rah, 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 rah. That one, it just stayed in a quiet, beautiful place, which was a surprise. And I appreciate a surprising musical moment. So those are my 5.
I hate to burst your bubble, though. The shoe that drops for that other crash is The Price of Pain, because that track plays before The Price of Pain. And then
Wait, you're saying what a song that identified as its own song is really connected to another song?
Yeah, that happens. For sure. That's kind of it's not like an extremely common thing in heavy metal, but it's definitely
thing.
It's definitely a thing, yeah, for sure. Like they'll make a song, and if it's like it's got to be within like a 5-minute or less range for kind of a track, and then it can play in between 2 songs and go into another song, or in some circumstances they can actually have independent pieces of music that connect the two tracks together to harken back to like the period when you could put a CD in a player and it would just play straight through and not have that digital cut that we have of the streamed tracks. But since you got to take off really soon, I think some of the counters and interesting perspectives towards your top five and critique of opinion there. One of the things that I really think is neat, especially with the fact, because I also have to listen to it with the lyrics sometimes depending on the band, is because of the fact that there are some bands out there that will actually break up words by syllable, and syllables of words will make up lines of a song. And because of the way that it's sung, broken up like that with that dissonant tones to it. Yeah. And sometimes, like I said, the way that that's done in and of itself, that's part of the reason why I'm like, oh man, that's so interesting. Because, obviously the singer, as a singer in regular music for melodic singing, outside of opera, because that's basically a head and shoulders above anything else. Everything's got its own kind of talent and technique to it.
For
but
sure.
with heavy metal, it's so much more difficult because it's something that everyone thinks that they can sing, but there's only a few people that can. Even more so, people think that they can do heavy metal stuff, but even fewer of those who think that they can. But then
With
to
that
turn
being
that around,
said, Chancy, do you like this vocalist for this genre? Is he good at
So-
what he does?
I mean, for the sound that the band provides, yes.
Okay.
Because that also plays into a lot of stuff that I find very interesting, because that's part of what the appeal for metal is for me, is the fact that different artists in different bands can make the band itself, because they themselves, obviously, because not to say every singer is an instrument, because every singer is in of themselves their own instrument, but with the way that they sing, they also kind of become an instrument that joins in with the band in a more than the traditional sense. To whereas, like, the way they sing, like, not for this band in particular, I'm talking about a different band when I talk about the breaking it up by syllable. So
Yeah.
they'll have like a 3-syllable word that ties two of the previous lines together as a line in the song. So it may be like one verse of a poem broken up into two separate parts with one like 3-syllable word or 4-syllable word that has, that's related to it, that ties it together. And also, when you were talking about how, the whole, if you would have saw, if your wife would have seen this in a notebook, she would tell him to see go see herself, for that matter.
That happened to me. That happened to me.
That's valid, but at the same time, a lot of the time, that's a lot of how a lot of people who relate to it, especially as a decompression method for that, like, release valve for their own turmoils. It's something that people relate to in that aspect. And it's also
the turmoil in the music matches the turmoil in the angsty teenager or grown
right.
up.
Right, exactly, for sure. And it helps the one help the other transition through that period. Because a lot of times it's the angsty person who grows up to write this thing that reaches out and touches the younger person who is the fan of that band.
Nice.
Like, it happened to me with a couple of different bands when I was in high school. But one of them in particular actually got me through a very dark time in life with an album that covers like dark topics and stuff of that nature that I won't bore you with because I know you got to bail. But that's one of the things where, like, I totally see where you're coming from. As I've grown up and kind of look back with hindsight, it's like, oh yeah, I can definitely see how people who aren't actually getting something from this as some type of relief would be very concerned by it. but then there's also the relief that you get from listening to something that you can relate to, that that doesn't require you to actually rent out like one of those rooms where you can break stuff and all that nonsense with the eye, with the goggles and the bats and the whatnot.
I
Well,
mean,
Ben,
it's all.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm.
Tell people where they can find you, where they can find your musical. That way you can head off to the south.
Because we know you got to bounce, man.
Very good. Well, again, Jeremy, Chancy, thanks for the opportunity to talk music with a couple of fellow music lovers. It was a really fun experience to listen to one familiar and one unfamiliar album and think and talk about them. So thanks, guys.
If you ever come back, I'll try and pick something more your way.
Yeah, less alarming, please.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. For sure. I will absolutely. If you come back, I'll pick something else that would be more appealing. Not even from the same genre, just in general.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. That might be fun. So the name of the show is Life Review, the Hospice Musical. Website is lifereviewmusical.com, LIFEREVIEW musical.com. And I'm very active on Instagram at Life Review Musical, same spelling. If you're in the Baltimore region, I'm going to be at Charm City Fringe the next couple of weekends. I don't know when this thing is airing, but it's going to be late September, early October. Check out charmcityfringe.org if you want to get tickets. And thanks again for having me on. Jeremy, Chancy, I enjoyed it, guys.
The pleasure was
Enjoyed having
mine.
you, brother. Have a good one, man.
Take care, fellas. Enjoy your night.
You as well.
You as well. Well, Chancy, well, why don't you officially say what album you brought, since you never actually got to say the title of it?
Well, technically he did. Ben already said it. It's actually it's Living Chaos by Oceano. And it's actually it's not a band I'm extremely familiar with. Like I was saying, it was kind of one of those things that a friend of mine had introduced me to, and when you had gave me your album and Ben's album for the show, I was kind of talking to them, and they were also literally just telling me, because this album just came out this year, and
I noticed that.
so I checked it out, and it was cool. So I was like, "Fuck it, I'll bring it." But I didn't quite expect. Like I would have probably not. I would have probably chose something else if I would have actually known the full extent. But I'm okay with that because it wouldn't be this show without it.
Exactly. And I actually, the first half of the CD, I had to fucking, same as Ben, I had to read the lyrics on Spotify to really know what the fuck was being said. Even once I read it, I could hear it fully once I read it, because that's the way it goes. But the second half of the album, I can understand a lot more of the lyrics without reading it, and I tended to enjoy that side of the album a lot more. But I overall enjoyed the album to some degree. I mean, it was better than fucking Cannibal Corpse by many degrees in my mind.
Oh yeah, leaps and bounds for sure.
So I enjoyed it. But what were your top 5 for this? Because this is the part I'm kind of dying to hear.
Hold on, I dropped my notebook. It's really funny because of my top 5, Ben actually mentioned I want to say 3 or 4. It's just about what order they fall into more so than anything else. But my number 5 was Darkness Rising.
Mhm.
And the reason behind that was just kind of like I mean, I really can't really put many words to it as far as like what it is that, because like the whole thing really grabbed me, because it was kind of harkened back more to a time. It was like the closest thing to like a new metal without it being actually new metal.
Yeah.
Into the Flames was my number 4, and because it's like one of those things, like the ones that he brought up and the things he was talking about, to where like, you know, like when he was saying about the lyrics and how messed up they are and stuff. It's like, yeah, I can relate to that, but it's because I'm looking at it from a different angle. But in hindsight, it's like, yeah, I could totally see that as well. Number 3 was Wounds Never Healed. I thought that was a very interesting. Uh, it was a very like interesting subject matter. Kind of like there was a trope throughout the entire album of just pain, chaos, destruction, heavy
Yep.
metal.
Exactly.
Mass produced was my number 2. I thought that was fucking awesome because of the, you know, just basically the consumer culture, you know, just breaking that whole process down, and the lyrics and the guitar and the drums. For me, I got to say the interlude and the Price of Pain were my number ones, because I put those together. And it was
As
actually
you
the
should.
first. Oh wait, as I would, as you do. Uh, that's actually the first. It was kind of one of those things where when my buddy brought up the album, I pulled up the album, and instead of just starting it off, right off the top, I just hit interlude, because it didn't show the whole word; it just showed in. So I just
Oh.
hit it, and then it played, and then it played, and then it played The Price of Pain, and I was like, "Yo, this is fucking sick! What is this shit?" And I started it right at that point. I hit start and just went straight from 1.
All right. Well, I actually had an honorable mention for this CD for
Noise.
reasons, but my honorable mention was "Wasted Life" because I thought it was a good opening track,
Yes.
and my number 5 was "Mass Produced" because I like the idea of the mass consumerism too, and it leading to downfall.
Yeah.
My number four was "Broken Curse," which nobody mentioned yet, but I fucking love that song. That was a good song. And my number 3 was "Into the Flames" because it's heavy metal. You gotta like that shit.
Yes.
My number 2 was "Darkness Rising" because I can actually understand the lyrics. That was actually the note I wrote. I can actually understand the lyrics in this one. And you're right. I didn't think about it, but it is kind of like a new metal song in a way, and I enjoy it. I mean, but then again, there's darkness in me, so it rises. I can relate to that. And I was that kid that got sent to the fucking counselor's office in high school for writing lyrics from songs I liked in my notebook. So yeah, that happens. It really does. And my number 1 was "Wounds Never Healed" because I love the lyrics
Nice.
and the techno beat was kind of cool.
Right?
Like that, it was a good song. Like, and I mean, wounds sometimes don't heal, so it metaphorically or physically, I guess. But I mean, it
Right?
makes sense, and it's metal. These are all metal topics, and they all fucking were amazing. So I actually enjoyed this album. It reminded me of like heavier European black metal to some degree. So I kind of enjoyed it, but
Which is
overall,
funny that it's funny that you would say that, because there isn't too much that I would ever imagine to be heavier than like Swedish black metal. That's like I usually, like, just speaking as a genre or a subgenre or a demographic for metal, that's usually pretty fucking balls out.
oh, I mean that's what it reminded me of. It was very guttural and very heavy, and I enjoy that music to some degree, but I can't say I put them.
Valid.
I put some of the fucking tracks in my like list on Spotify, but I can't say I listened to most of the album again. But I
Yeah.
put some of the tracks on my like list. But But folks, we brought you these albums 3 over a good 2 hours and 10 minutes about, all combined. But come back next week and see what we have in store for you. We don't even know what it is yet. So come see what we have in store for you. Chancy, where can they find you?
Shit, they know where they can find me. Red Eye Roundtable, Instagram, and TikTok. Red Eye Table on X, and scavenger hunt still goes.
No one's found you in a while. It's been
a few
quiet.
weeks.
Well,
yeah. I could technically consider this one as but I already knew this person. It just happened. It just so happened they were like, "Hey, have you heard this new album?" So
exactly. And folks, you can find both your musers in the usual places. Facebook as the Uncensored, Unapologetic, and Untamed UQ Podcast Collective. You can find us on XXBaby and the Gram as that Juggalo Bastard. And you can find us on TikTok as that Juggalo Bastard Podcast. Or you can find us on YouTube as Maniacal Music Musings. And remember, always a proud part of the Blind Knowledge Network, because all knowledge is blind until you meet General Butt Fucking Naked. Come back next time and see what we have in store for y'all. Musers out.